Ba, 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 ba. Okay, I'm done with it. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but any of you are Star Wars aficionados, you know all about that too. Darth Vader. I have to wear my geek headset today because we have work going on in our house, and these guys are noisy today. They're like noisy termites or something. I hope y'all are doing well today. Good morning. It's a good day to you. You might be seeing this in the afternoon by the time I get it up. I'm Jay Delancey, alias Boat Checker, and today's date is September 29th, year of our Lord, 2021. And if you caught the title on this one, it's probably going to get me banned from, deplatformed or something for talking about it. So I'm going to be careful on this. And hopefully we can adjust that camera right. And yesterday I did a very annoying thing on my desktop. I forgot to hit the share button. And boy, that was annoying. Oh man, the whole day, people that watch my slides, all they saw was my mug, my ugly mug, talking to them instead of the slides I wanted them to see. So today I have compensated for that. I made sure we got the record going. You're watching live stream later on today on our website, voterintegrityproject.com. You can check in and see the slides that really lay this out, because I'm going to try and describe what's going on. You might or might not get it, but you look at the slides, you'll get it. So what I want to talk about is something called the spiral of silence. And the real reason why Trump won is a bonus. That way, a little clickbait to make you stick around and hopefully not get me deplatformed. Because to even say such blasphemy like that probably means I'm in big trouble. Any somehow. Here we go. The proverb for today, chapter 29, verse 25. Says, the fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. Now, in this day and age where fear is the coin of the realm for controlling us and making us mask up and even get jabbed with certain things that I don't want to mention, that fear will drive you into all sorts of problems. And that fear, we visualize ourselves as I'm not afraid of anything, or my favorite is I'm my own man. Mark Peterson, the award-winning artist, Mark Peterson, one day realized that one of the funniest, he saw a quote from someone who said, we're nonconformists. And he thought that was hilarious because it's like, we are nonconformists. Okay, it'll sink in later, kind of like Novocaine, it'll take a minute. Fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe. I could go on and on and on about that, but I'm gonna preview what's going on here today. What the real issue is somebody. There it is, the proverb, and then the name of today's lesson or sermon or whatever we want to call it, spiral of silence. Beware. I think it might even say defeating or beating. That's it. I think on Facebook I said beating the spiral of silence, and why Trump won. All right, and you can blame this lady. She's deceased now. Her name is, I don't know how to pronounce it, Elizabeth Noel or Noelle. I don't know. Last name Newman. Elizabeth Noel Newman is what I call her. She's a German lady, if you didn't figure it out from the name of that author of the book. And it's a biography of her. Very interesting person. Now, a little biography on me, just a snippet here, if you indulge me for a moment. I sold our house and packed up the family in 1995 to go to Regent University. I'd already decided that I had withdrawn my application to law school and decided I wanted to study journalism, because I felt like you could have all the laws in the world, but if you didn't have a culture that was supportive of those laws, it really didn't matter what the laws were. And I thought, well, I'm gonna get into it a little different way, and I'm gonna work in journalism to that end. And I ran into some headwinds there that I was planning to get a doctorate when I first got there, and then they changed the rules and said you need to have a master's. And I already had a master's in business administration, but they said you need to have a communication related master's before we can admit you to the PhD program. And I was like, all right. So I started taking the master's courses and decided, I'm just going to go be a journalist. I don't care. I'm just going to go into media and do the work and not worry about the PhD. Then I got to my communication theory class. And in communication theory, I learned there's two theories I learned. And today I'm just going to talk about one of them because I don't want to be here all day. You don't want to be here all day, but it's called the spiral of silence. And when I heard about this theory, it made me mad. It really angered me because it was so devious. And a lot of people in the scholarly realm knew all about it. And the rest of us poor dumb sheep didn't know anything about it. So they were using this against us for social control. And that's heavy, heavy, heavy. Now, Newman, she got her dissertation right during the rise of Nazism in Germany. She was back, don't quote me on this, I think it was 1942 that she got her dissertation. You think about what was going on in Germany in 1942. So she put in some anti-Semitic comments in her dissertation, in her whatever that way, or doctoral dissertation. She put in some anti-Semitic comments. And you think about it, it's kind of like now, what would you put in your dissertation now if you want to graduate? You'd have to put in some kind of hating whitey or something, kind of wokeism in order to get your dissertation approved now. So she, in a way, she was a victim of her times, that she wrote what she had to. History will never tell us what was in her heart about that, but she did say some anti-Semitic things. So if you do any research on her, you're going to find some people that they're going to throw a lot of shade at her for those remarks she made in 1942. But looking at her entire body of work, after the war, she started a polling organization in Germany called the Allensbach Institute. Don't ask me to spell it. I can barely pronounce it. But the Allensbach was kind of the German equivalent to Gallup. So she made a lot of money running a polling organization, and they were nailing stuff. And she had a secret sauce that she didn't tell anybody what it was. But what she would do at every election, all these polling people would go in and they predict the final outcome of the polls. And this chick was nailing it all the time. And finally, people were making jokes, sexist jokes about her. Are you into witchcraft or something, Elizabeth? Man, you're nailing it. What's going on? Finally, in 1965, now this is 20 years later, or maybe 1974, I'm not sure which. I think her first edition was 1965, when she spilled the beans on what was her secret sauce. And it was probably stuff she learned by observing Nazi Germany, but she never said anything bad about that experience. So it just kind of makes you go, I wonder how much she was in on. Regardless, she figured it out, and I'm going to help you figure it out today too. And her theory was called the theory of the spiral of silence. Second edition, I think that was 1974. Public opinion, our social skin. And you may think that you are an independent thinker, but I guarantee you, everyone knows better. God knows better, and the devil knows better. Everybody knows better, and all the people involved know better. You're lying to yourself if you truly walk around telling people you're an independent thinker. I wish I could say, oh, I'm an independent thinker, but no, we're all tribal in our nature. And the question is, which tribe am I in? Am I in the bigger tribe? Am I in the smaller tribe? Where's my tribe against the bigger tribe? And fear. Okay, in a nutshell, her theory is right here. At the top of this, okay, those of you on Facebook can't see it. Picture at the top of the diagram, alleged public opinion. Alleged, that's a great word for this, because public opinion is what they tell you it is. and the push polls are used. Mitt Romney, the front runner, that's the alleged public opinion. That's, I think Goebbels said a message repeated often enough becomes the truth, or something like that. Or maybe it was Lenin or Marx or somebody said, a lie told once is a lie told 1,000 times is the truth. So it's that kind of psychology that they're looking at. So you've got your alleged public opinion, and you have this spiral that gets smaller and smaller. Now, what happens is people's willingness to speak out at the top, where there's a lot of people in that spiral, they're willing to speak out. And then as the spiral gets smaller, the person begins to think they're in the minority view. And eventually, if you think you're in the minority view, you will zip up. Now, where this applies and why I wanted to divert and talk about this is because we're getting the word that people are calling the legislature. And by the way, keep calling, do not quit. Harass these rhinos and make them do their job and look over our elections. Make them do this. They have to. If they don't, excuse me. If they don't, fill in the blank. If they don't, then who will? All right. It's not just a rhetorical question. There's things you can do and there's things you can't do. The things you can do is call them, and then you can do a citizen canvass. And again, my money is on North Carolina Audit Force Telegram page. If you can find it, I don't know. You ought to be able to find it. Find someone in it. Get a hold of them. Ask around, because they're the ones. As far as I can tell, I'm just watching, but as far as I can tell, the Audit Force is the best game going right now to get to a canvas. So the canvas is what we need that citizens can do. But today I'm talking about pushing the opinion narrative on in the social world, and you are fighting the spiral of silence, because the polling, here's the shade, the lie that somebody told one of our people who called and reported back to me. By the way, if you call, and feel free, I beg you, put your responses in social media. If you call and talk to these people, put what they say, who you talk to, what day you talk to them. Go ahead and document what it was. These are legislative aides you're probably going to talk to. Some of you are going to run into your politicians somewhere and hit them. And I'm not just talking Republicans either. I'm talking Democrats too. They need to know that we ain't buying this soap they're selling us. The alleged public opinion is that, hey, the elections were perfect. Move on to 2020. We'll get them next time. Sounds like John Boehner when he talked about the Obamacare, or all the rhinos who, oh yeah, we'll get them. You give us a majority and we'll get them. And they finally had the majority. And then John McCain famously voted no to get rid of Obamacare. So yeah, we see what rhinos are made of. This is the kind of crap they do. They're playing you. So your goal here is to combat this spiral of silence. Now, at the end of the bottom of this silence thing is fear of isolation. And that is what drives us to be silent. Remember my proverb a while ago? Remember that? You need to fear the Lord instead of fearing isolation. Now, Newman, hello, Newman. She thought that, and I think she's right on this, that we don't fear God, we fear something else. What is it? Do we fear the devil? Do we fear death? Do we fear cancer? Do we fear public speaking? The answer is yes. That wasn't what you're looking for. The core to her theory was that what we fear more than anything else is being alone. Why do you fear cancer? You fear death. Why do you fear public speaking? Because you're afraid you'll say something up there and you'll isolate yourself from the room, or they'll laugh at you, or they'll expose you. You're like the emperor with no clothes. They'll go, oh my goodness, this guy's an idiot, or whatever. So it takes a certain amount of courage to get up and speak, but really it's just a matter of not taking counsel from your fear is what does it. Now, there's a time to take counsel from your fear and weigh it and go, what should I be afraid of? What are the threats? That's what a SWOT matrix is. SWOT matrix, it's a business term. strengths, opportunity, weakness, threats. You got to know what your threats are and mitigate them. But once you figure it out, you charge ahead. And right now, our problem is legislators who don't want to. They're afraid of the election cartel. They're afraid of their leadership, the Speaker of the House and Senator Pro Tem in North Carolina. But as I demonstrated yesterday, what would have been a really good briefing if I pulled the slides up like I was going to show you, like I thought you had, but you can still follow it. It's just harder because I'm talking to slides that you're not seeing. Yeah, this is the problem with live TV, low budget, whatever we're doing here. I'm not sure what it is, but anyway, their deal was the Senator Pro Tem in Pennsylvania. That guy was colluding with the Democrat governor and the election cartel there, the Secretary of State, the acting Secretary of State. It's a good one. It talks about Veronica DeGraff and Reed and her North Carolina roots, and how Gary Bartlett has now got her installed in a Secretary of State in Pennsylvania, where now Bartlett can control two people. He controls the North Carolina Director of Elections and he controls the Pennsylvania Director of Elections. I mean, boy, you talk about a Sith Lord, is that what we call him? Or a Dark Lord or something, with his little Sith out there with their little black masks and their lightsabers that are red, the bad guys. He's got two of them on the field. And they're pretty powerful too, because they're in very powerful positions. But I digress. The theory of spiral silence is that you're afraid of it. And I'm going to go through a little bit of it now, and we're going to switch screens, and hopefully I can do this. I'm going to put some links on there for those of you who want to read more. You have to go to our website, voterintegrityproject.com. You can see it. Mass communication theory, a website, talks about the spiral of silence. And I'll read through some of the key points. It says fear of isolation when the group or public realizes that the individual has a divergent opinion from the status quo. And then fear of reprisal for more, I said reprisal, not appraisal, fear of reprisal for more extreme isolation. Suddenly I can't read. Fear of reprisal or more extreme isolation, in the sense that voicing your opinion might lead to negative consequences beyond that of mere isolation. Loss of job, being kicked out of organizations, being kicked out of restaurants. This has a lot of application to that thing we will not discuss here, involving certain attire we have to wear over our faces, for example. Let's see, I want to stop there for a second. Okay, people say, no, nonsense. I don't do that stuff. No, one of the oh, by the ways is the fact that where there's things we don't care about, but we still glance over at them. Exhibit A is the tabloids at the grocery store. If you still go to grocery stores, you stand in line, you glance at the headlines on the tabloids to see, you kind of see what's going on. Not that you're going to buy it, but you're just curious what's going on. Elizabeth Noelle Newman said that we have like a flagella, like an invisible tail on us that is swaying like a sailboat. It lays itself up against the wind, and it wants to know where the wind's blowing and decides, just like a sailboat, the wind's blowing this way, and we turn the sail a certain way to tack a certain direction. Our flagellum, our sixth sense of which way the social wind is blowing, whether we consciously admit it or not, we're looking at it. We're calculating. Politicians do it more calculating than you do, because they're actually running polls to see how they feel. The cowards, but that's what they have to do. Some of them do. My favorites don't. My favorites just charge ahead, and they don't care which way the wind's blowing. Those are called principled politicians. They're called the enemy in our legislature. They're bad people, and both parties hate them because, ooh, that guy could disrupt everything. That's what Trump was. He was a disruptor. He was that bull in the china shop who could drive public opinion. And people like that drive public opinion, as can you. The theory, they give a long critique here. I'm not going to read you the whole article, but it's based on fear of isolation and of public criticism. Let's see, don't want to say any more from this page. It's pretty short. Yeah, they critique it from the weaknesses and all that. But I want to show you. I'm not gonna. There's a video I'm gonna play, but I'm not gonna play the sound for it because it really delays and it's really bad. So I'm just gonna narrate it. But what it is, it's from a. If you want to see the video, I'll have a link to it on our website for today's podcast. It's called Elevator Psychology, Social Influence. And what it is candid camera. They put a hidden camera back in the day, back in the dark ages in the 50s, and they had black and white TV. And they put this camera in. I don't know if you can hear this on Facebook, and I'm a little worried as what's going to happen with it, but we'll find out. This is bad Facebook live stream. I'm not sure because I'm hearing the video in my ear. But so what I'll do is pause it and tell you what's going on. Now, what they did, they walked to an elevator. Everybody in the elevator were Confederates except for one guy. Now, the one guy gets on the elevator. He's facing the door like we all do when we get in an elevator. Everybody else got in and faced the wall behind them. And they watched under hidden camera how the individual in the elevator kept talking himself into turning casually toward the other side. The video is really entertaining. I'll have the whole video on our website. The sad part was that a lot of people went ahead and turned around and went that same way, looked toward the back of the elevator. And at one point, they even on cue that no one knew except for the people in the elevator, they all turned around and went the other way. And the poor dumb innocent person tended to go the other way too. Whatever they were doing, he tended to do. And these conformity experiments, if you just look at YouTube, there's a lot of conformity experiments. It's a lot of social science research, and I'm smiling. It's kind of funny, but it's not. It's kind of dark. Thus the dark intro tune at the beginning of today's podcast. It's really scary that just because of what others are doing, we will do things that we know are wrong. Now, before I finish up on Elizabeth Noelle Newman's Spiral of Silence, I want to dig into one more precursor. So you got the elevator experiment, and you got a guy named Solomon Asch, A-S-C-H. He did something back in, there's a whole line of work starting in 1935 with a guy named Sharif, who is not Omar Sharif, but a guy named Sharif, a scholar named Sharif. And he found that people could be forced to conform when there was no correct answer. Ash did something more devious in 1951. He created a situation where he had a room full of stooges, except for one guy, or Confederates, really is what they were, and one stooge. So the way this diagram I have that I'm showing my people who watch the video is a bunch of stooges, but really they're Confederates. And then the innocent participant is really the stooge. But what happened was Ash was showing them a diagram that had 3 lines, A, B, and C. And they had different lengths, a big long one, a medium one, a short one. And it was obviously, there was no ambiguity about it at all. Any idiot could look at it and see that on the first one, it matched line B. And what they had was they had 3 lines and they had another line, and they would ask everybody in the room, out in front of everybody else, they would say, which line best represents line, the subject line I or line 1. They'd say, which line best represents it? The answer is B, but the stooge he wasn't the first person called upon. And one of the Confederates, or in the diagram, I'll use the terms on the diagram, the stooges versus the innocent. But the stooges were like minions working for Solomon Asch. They were the public polling organizations pushing the agenda. Think of it that way. So all the stooges said, oh, well, definitely line A is the matching one to the subject line, to line I. So line I is this long, line A is that long. And line B is the right line, and then line C is much shorter, and it's way different. So it's clearly obvious the answer is B. But the Stooges all said, oh, hey, oh, working down the line. Now, the innocent guy's going, what the heck? I'm on another planet? What's going on here? I'm seeing, God, the answer's B. What's going on here? And they start freaking out. And some of them are really feeling intensity in the studies. I'm just paraphrasing the study, and I may get some of the details wrong, so I'm going to gloss over it. The bottom line was, at about 35% of the time, by the time it got to the innocent person, he would conform to what everybody else was saying. Said there were 18 trials in total, and the Confederates gave the wrong answer on 12 trials. And Ash was interested to see if the real participant would conform to the majority view. And what he found was 32% of the time, about a third of the time, the innocent people would go along with the group. And said, but they had multiple questions. And 75% of the time, the innocent person went along with the group at least once. Kind of like to rationalize, okay, I'll give them that one, even though it was clearly obvious the guy was just going along with the group. But he just talked himself into conforming, and he did it. In the control group, where there was no peer pressure to conform, the Confederates, it was less than 1% of the time they gave the wrong answer. Interestingly enough, as other people have done that study, they found that this is off the chart here. This is not on the slides, but that if one other person went along before the innocent person got there, that would greatly reduce the innocent person's willingness to lie and give the wrong answer. But when two other people did it, 100% of the time, the innocent person would go along with those two. And there's great group communication theory in there tying into business communication and all that. But this is not a business class. This is political science. So anyway, sorry, I teach you some theory today, but you got to have it to understand what's being played against you, because people are calling the legislature and they're being told that nobody else is complaining about this. That is the lie. I meant to get to that earlier and I digressed. You're being told, no, you're the only one who's called about that. They are lying to you. These are liars. They lie for a living, and they're lying to you. You're not the only person who is calling them. They're telling you that because they want to gaslight you and make you think you are in the minority. That you're down at the bottom of that spiral, you're all alone, and you are going to be socially isolated. This is why I say get on Telegram, find the channels where this kind of discussion is going on. Go see some of the speakers that are coming around talking about it. We may have some news in that area in the near future, but for now, I'll keep my mouth shut. But you're not in the minority. The legislature and their stooges who work for them. I shouldn't say that. Some of those stooges, I love them, and they're not stooges at all. They're patriots. I can't tell you who they are, though, because I don't want to get them fired. So there are some people in there, kind of like you look in the book of Acts, I think it was in the Bible, that there were Christians serving in Caesar's household, but Paul didn't out them, or maybe he did in Acts because it was written so much later. But yeah, we got some key people in the legislature. They're just the ones that are elected are keeping their head down because they're working for tyrants in both parties, so they have to keep their mouth shut. But there's more of them in there than we realize. So they're not alone, but a lot of LAs are telling you you're alone, and you get them in private, they'll thank you for what you're doing. So keep calling. All right, a couple of quick links. I do want to talk about how to beat this. You might have noticed in the original cartoon, in beating the spiral of silence, it was Superman. Well, some guy had his chest open with the green stuff. That's the kryptonite. And there is a kryptonite to this. And Elizabeth Newman figured it out. And it's the theory explains, she called them a vocal minority, or another term they use is called hardcore nonconformists. These are people who speak out again. I'm going to read from the font of all knowledge, Wikipedia. It says the theory explains a vocal minority by stating that people who are highly educated or who have greater influence, or I'm sorry, greater affluence, and the few other cavalier individuals who do not fear isolation are likely to speak out regardless of public opinion. It further states that this minority is a necessary factor of change, while the compliant majority is a necessary factor of stability, with both being a product of evolution. Yeah, that's Wikipedia. There is a vocal minority which remains at the top of the spiral in defiance of threats of isolation. They're not afraid of being isolated, and they just keep speaking. The theory calls these vocal minorities the hardcore nonconformists, or the avant-garde. The hardcore nonconformists are, I'm quoting this, people who have already been rejected for their beliefs and have nothing to lose by speaking out. If you're doing Christianity right, that might be you. If you've been rejected for your faith, that might be you, which is why you are a threat to the bigger majority, because you're not afraid of speaking out. I continue. The hardcore has the ability to reconfigure majority opinion. Let me read that again. The hardcore has the ability to reconfigure majority opinion. That's hope right there. It says, while the avant-garde are the intellectuals, artists, and reformers in the isolated minority who speak out because they are convinced they are ahead of the times. The problem with masterful Maoist type propaganda we have here is the intellectuals and the elite were the ones who were targeted for the propaganda. And now they're throwing it at us, trying to make us conform. So this is dangerous territory. All that's left is the hardcore nonconformists. So we have to speak continuously and get people to realize you're not alone. This is why not wearing certain accoutrements when you go out, despite the threat of isolation, the threat of ridicule, the threat of being kicked out of your favorite restaurant. This is where we have to make our compromises every day. It's really hard. It's something that if you can fight against those kinds of things, you'll be more equipped to fight against this overwhelming media voice that's trying to control exactly who you are and how you think. And this is a world we're in. Now, I'm going to prove to you this works. If you don't believe this theory works, I'll prove it to you with this. I got 2 words. And if you're looking at the Facebook, Facebook, I'm sorry, you won't know what we're looking at here. But it's pictures of a bunch of kids from the 60s standing out in front of a place, and all you see is a sign that says LL, and it says INN across the bottom. What it was a decrepit hotel in the, I think it was in Soho or someplace in New York, where it was called the Stonewall Inn. Now, I learned a lot from listening to NPR, and this is one of the things I learned was that was back in the 50s and 60s, gays, homosexuals would hang out there. And that was their place. That was where they found comfort in each other. Kind of like certain restaurants, certain bars in Raleigh, that on a Thursday night, these are straight bars, but on certain nights, it's just some kind of word in the gay community that they all go there. And everyone there, if you're just hetero Joe walking in there, you might figure it out and go, I don't have a vibe here. It's just weird, and leave. The Stonewall was that kind of place. And I guess you could do more research, but I think it was that way all the time. What would happen was once in a while, the New York City cops they'd get bored and they'd go, hey, let's go. Their behavior was illegal. Being homosexual was illegal back in the 50s, and it was deviant behavior, and the law enforcement was all about it. I know this is so long ago, and it's just so bizarre. But this was when the majority was using force to implement their will, be it, another issue in a moment I'll cover them. They're talking about gays, and I'll talk about blacks voting. Gays were, they'd just be there, and the cops would show up one day with a billy club and just beat the crap out of them. Like 4 or 5 policemen go in there, just beat them up and arrest some of them and take them out. And that was just a random event that would happen there. And one day, I don't know if it was planned or it was spontaneous. I'm sure there's books about it, and you can read more about it if you want to, but I'm just giving you, look at Stonewall Riots, just Google that term. And what happened was they started fighting back. And they were the hardcore nonconformists of that movement, that issue. And look at them now. You know, they dominate the culture, they dominate the arts, they dominate politics, they dominate everything. It's their agenda. They've won the culture war. Okay, there it is. What it is. It started at Stonewall with hardcore nonconformity, a very small group of vocal people who were used to being outcasts and said, "What have I got to lose?" There's a term. Voting Trump. What the hell do you have to lose? Okay, the next slide is the Woolworth boycott in Greensboro, North Carolina. 3 guys sitting at the lunch counter. It says their roast turkey dinner, 65 cents. Wow. Remember those days? Me neither. That was 1965. 3 college students from North Carolina A&T. One of them was Clarence Henderson, too, by the way, a North Carolina hero. Yeah, I don't know who the other ones were. There were actually 4 black guys, maybe 5. There's a white lady walking, you can't see it. But these were the avant-garde of of finally getting rid of the Jim Crow laws and getting the Voting Rights Act and just finally getting blacks the rights they got under Lincoln, but had never really gotten because the Democrats in the South, with their enforcement arm, the KKK, were keeping blacks down and not letting them vote. And it took the Voting Rights Act, where the Republicans were the difference that helped get the Voting Rights Act through. It took that to get blacks finally over the top, where they had some rights and they had some teeth in the law for people who were abusing their rights to vote. So this hits home. The idea of continuing to speak out, even when society at large is telling you you're in the minority. If you continue to speak out, you will become the majority. Either that or the Maoists will win and we'll all be in concentration camps. So I prefer to have hope on this, that we are going to win this. And that's why I think we will. Now, let's see, Stonewall, what do I have here? I may have the wrong. Yeah, someone photoshopped it and showed an image of it that shows it's more of a propaganda matter. It's a picture that was never taken and it shows people from another time. Where this plays into Trump, Zogby poll, I had a real good feeling. Let's see, Trump under fire. This was 2020. Headline, Trump under fire, supporters feel pressure to remain silent. See, the way the other side wins is to pressure you into silence. That's the strategy. They know it. They need to make you feel you're alone. That's why in 2016, they were stealing Trump signs because this was orchestrated. And you had to believe you were in the minority. Oh, Hillary was going to win. It was inevitable. Think back to that spiral at the top. That was the supposed message. And it always worked before. It worked for Republicans to be engineered into picking the candidate they wanted. Hello, Romney. Hello, McCain. Hello, Bush. Hello, Bush. The only time it didn't work was with Reagan and then all the Bushes and the Romneys and every candidate, whoever ran against Obama, I guess that was, and who ran against Clinton too, Bob Dole. The media, they used, it was called push polling, that's one term for it. The media setting the climate to tell you which way the wind is blowing and to make you think it's inevitable. I had good conservative friends walking out of the convention when the conventioneers, this is back the state convention many moons ago, and they went ahead and voted for Dole, even though there were other candidates that were better. And they said, well, I think they said something like, he's electable. And that's a term that they use to frame it, to say who's electable. Who gets to decide who's electable? Oh, the media. Oh, the political cartel tells you who's electable. So we need people who are willing to fight against that, and maybe even primary your local legislator if they're against you on these critical issues to our time that are affecting our survival as a middle class. Things like election integrity, my issue, number one. Things like the crap they're teaching your kids in school. Thank God, we homeschooled and private schooled and had some 6 years of special ed for my son, but the mainstream, it wasn't as bad then as it is now, as they always say. What's the point? Fight these issues. You're fighting the spiral of silence. So 2020, they used different techniques to do it, to silence them, but there were polling. There was polling information to suggest that they were being kept in quiet, in the silence. It says a Granite State poll conducted by University of New Hampshire found that 2/3 of Trump supporters said they were reluctant to put a Trump sign in their yard because they're worried their house may be vandalized. A similar number won't put a bumper sticker on the car for the same reason. And nearly half, 45%, said they won't talk about their support for Trump with their friends or coworkers. That was the social environment created by the media and by the paid thugs, the modern, we call them Clantifa, the modern KKK, which is they wore black masks and black robes instead of white robes. I'll leave it at that. Mark Peterson coined the term Clantifa. I thought that was pretty good. There is a lot of research on spiral of silence, even though when you first Google it, you'll see someone will talk about her being a Nazi. I haven't looked lately, but that was the shade back when I was in grad school that they were throwing that. It was great fodder on the threads, on the discussion threads in these scholarly circles. And I presented a paper on spiral in Virginia, and someone asked about that. And I had to have an answer ready for it. I answered it, and it's just moving on. It's like people did what they had to do. They were under Nazism, and I don't want to fault her work. Her work stands on its own, but at the bottom, at the end of it all, the scarier picture she was painting was the media being used for social control, and that's alive and well right now, especially in medical communication. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get deplatformed. All right. Now, there was a poll in 2016. When I heard about this, I knew Trump would win. Somebody, I think it was Mark or somebody, reminded me of that years later. They said, you were saying right before the election, you said Trump would win. You guarantee it. And I did not remember saying that because I had my days that were ups and downs. And I was like, I think he'll win. I think he will. I didn't know what it was going to look like when he won because it was uncharted territories. For an outsider, I was too young and too dumb to realize what Reagan was because he was the last outsider. They took care of him. They got Bush in as running mate, so that kept Reagan under control. I won't go down that rabbit hole with Trump. But anyway, in 2016, pollsters at University of Southern California had a unique method to predict President Trump's 2016 election victory. And what they asked a question that was a spiral question. When I heard this question, I said, dang, somebody is applying spiral, because this was the question that Newman was asking. And I'm not going to read the article. What her secret question was not to ask you who you're voting for, because this is where you get people willing to lie to the pollster. It's just one of those things. Did you vote? Well, of course I voted. We've talked about that before, where people are going to lie and give you the socially correct answer. And one of those socially correct answers is to go along with the mainstream verbally. It's like wearing your mask, even though you're opposed to it. You're going along with the mainstream, and you're doing it for certain reasons. And I'm not calling you a coward. I do it sometimes too. I like going to Costco. And the price of entry is I wear a mask. I hate myself. I don't go there as much as I used to. I don't give them as much money as I used to, but it is what it is. And, call me a coward, call me whatever. But this isn't about masks. This is about spiral silence. This is about the polling. And the question they asked, I'm trying to find the exact wording, but it was something along the lines of, who do you think your neighbors are voting for? They tried to control for social judgments, and that's a psychological term that when they ask you who you're voting for, that's a social judgment question, and it becomes, there's a peer pressure. I'm trying to see if this article, it didn't have the wording on it. The wording I heard was something along the lines of, who do you think will win? Regardless of who you're voting for, who do you think will win? That's a good way of putting it. Who do you think your neighbors are voting for? That's not as good a way to put it, because we tend to live in neighborhoods that match our politics. Unless we know we live in a lefty neighborhood like I did when I was in Raleigh, that was 75% registered Democrat, 25% Republican. I was like, crap. All right, what's the point? I think the better question is, who do you think will win? And I hear that was the internal question that Patrick Goodell asked in 1980 to predict a Reagan landslide a week before the election. He was the pollster for Jimmy Carter, and all the polls had Carter winning. He was an incumbent running against Reagan, some nut job conservative from California, and yet the late breakers were all going for Reagan, and they just thought Reagan was going to win. And that's a predictor of who's going to win. So that was when I knew that Trump was going to win. That same poll happened in 2020, same result. Trump had a 56%. I said, oh, Trump's going to win this easy. And people asked me before the election, they said, who do you think will win? I said, well, Trump will win unless it's stolen, unless there's fraud, Trump will win. That was my only caveat, because just for the real social science that counts, which is spiral of silence, Trump was going to win. It was just across the board. Now, you can fill in any little narrative you want to believe, anything you want to believe. Those who disagree with me, you're free to think what you want to think. But that was why I knew Trump was going to win. That's why I believe he won, is that polling doesn't lie. It never has. And Trump won that polling. So how the cartel managed to balance the books is your job. If you're reading this and buy into that theory, your job is to figure out how. What are we going to do about this? All right, so I mentioned the kryptonite. I'm going to show some slides. The kryptonite is, do not shut up about demanding an audit, a full forensic audit. Do not shut up. That's the key to everything, is you need to be a hardcore nonconformist. And that's what hardcore nonconformists look like. I was in Winston-Salem recently. Those of you who aren't watching the video of this, but are watching it live on Facebook, I might have to post this picture. It's great. It's a room full of smiling people holding their ID cards up. It's something I like to do when I go speak. My board makes me charge money now for speaking, so don't call me and ask me to speak unless you want to put some money where your mouth is, because I just don't have the energy to keep going out and speaking to people just to entertain them at dinner clubs or supper clubs. So that's an advertisement for my speaking, because I don't get a paycheck out of this still. Maybe one day, but right now I don't. Whole nother story. But this is an audience that they are, many of them in that room were the hardcore nonconformists. There were some in there that were not. They know who they are. They were there to spy on me and to watch me with a skeptical eye. And that's what's going to happen. Don't let fear stop you from doing what you need to do just because there are people out there who are doing that. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I think that about ties it down. What are the action steps here? The action steps are for you to do not quit. Do not give up. Do not give up. And keep asking, demanding an audit. And go find a Canvas team, get some training, and go do your Canvas. It's very important that we do these Canvases. Your pressure on the audit is one thing. Your Canvas will actually get the evidence that will move the ball. It'll give the legislators, the more cowardly ones, but some of the brave ones too, it'll give them something to take to their leadership and go, hey, this is a problem. We've got to address it. We've got to address it, boss. What are you going to do? Hey, I'm getting hammered by my constituents, boss. What are you going to do? Hey, some of you, I hope you, if not you, who, some of you are going to have to decide if you had the money and the talent to get up in front of a room full of people and have a little bit of money you're willing to invest in it, because you're going to need training, you're going to need a lot of things to do it. But we're going to need you to primary your local guy or gal over this issue. Say, look, because if we don't get to the bottom of how the cartel is controlling our elections, there will be no more elections. It'll be the end of, it'll be democracy. It'll be what democracy is. in third world countries, where you hand your ballot to some nice government employee, and he takes the ballot from you and goes behind the wall, goes into the room, and comes out and tells you who won. And you go, mind if I watch? Yes, I do mind. You can't watch. Stay out of here or I'll have you arrested. Okay. For somebody who has nothing to hide, they sure are acting funny. That's what the audit might uncover. The Arizona audit did uncover a lot of funny stuff that when we first got involved in election integrity in 2011, we assumed there were people on the payroll at the State Board of Elections doing the kind of research we were doing, and there weren't. And now, thank God, the cavalry showed up. Now there's all kinds of people doing research in this area, showing we just found the tip of an iceberg with dead voters, with non-citizen voters, and with interstate double voters. We found a tip of the iceberg in those three areas. And we moved as far as we could with that, but not being a large body and not having the kind of funding that you need to actually make a difference on this. We figured out why later was that somebody had their boot on our throat, and it wasn't the Democrats, oddly enough. So we've been fighting a war on two fronts. We thought it was just the Democrats and didn't realize there were people shooting at us who we thought were on our side. And that was people asked me, wake me up at 3 a.m. and asked me, what's the biggest mistake you ever made with Voter Integrity Project? I would tell you, it was thinking that just because someone had an R behind their name, they were on our side. And I hope you don't fall for that same trick. And I'll leave it at that. Keep calling your legislators and go look for canvassing operations that you can join. And don't get sucked in just because you think people are on your side because they're doing or saying things that sound like they're on your side. Judge them by their actions, including me. Judge us by our actions. And keep your eyes on God. Don't be afraid of man. Fear God. At that, I gotta go. Stop the